You see those headlines all the time, right? Some amazing new claim that seems way too good to be true. So, in a world like this, how do you tell a real breakthrough from, well, bogus science? Today, we're going to build a toolkit for that, based on the work of physicist Robert L. Park. Let's dive into the 7 warning signs. I mean, we are just surrounded by these extraordinary claims. You hear about anti-gravity devices, free energy machines that pop up out of nowhere, and what's wild is that some of these ideas actually get millions of dollars in funding. The only problem is, a lot of them are just plain wrong. So here's the big question. How can we, just regular, curious people, learn to spot the difference? How do we tell real, game-changing science from a total dead end? Well, turns out there are some really clear telltale signs to look out for. All right, so our first couple of warning signs, they aren't even about the discovery itself. Nope, they're all about how the story is revealed to the world. A flashy press conference might seem exciting, but it can actually be a huge red flag. Okay, the first major warning sign, the person making the discovery goes straight to the media, completely bypassing the scientific community. See, real science has this super important process called peer review. That's where other independent experts in the field tear the work apart to check for errors. A press conference is basically a way to skip all that hard work, which kind of suggests the claims might not hold up. And this is the perfect example. When Pons and Fleischmann announced cold fusion to the world, they were super vague on the details. Other scientists couldn't really judge the work, let alone try to repeat it. What you got was this massive media frenzy over a claim that, in the end, just couldn't be backed up. And here's warning sign number 2. The discoverer claims that there's some big, powerful establishment out there actively trying to suppress their work. It's a classic story, right? The lone genius fighting against the system. It's compelling, for sure, but it's also a great way to distract from the fact that the science itself just isn't there. And you've probably heard these stories before. The idea that big oil is hiding a car that runs on water, or that the hot fusion scientists tried to kill cold fusion to protect their own funding. These conspiracy theories are really gripping, but often they're just a smokescreen for a lack of real evidence. So, moving on from the big announcement, the next set of red flags pops up when you look at the evidence itself, or, as is often the case, the lack of any solid evidence. So sign number 3 is when the so-called scientific effect is always just barely there. You can hardly even measure it. In science, we talk about the signal-to-noise ratio. A real discovery, the signal, should get way clearer as our instruments get better. But with bogus science, the effect just stays blurry, lost in the background noise. Why? Because there's probably no real signal there to begin with. Think about it. You see this pattern everywhere. Blurry photos of flying saucers, a fleeting glimpse of the Loch Ness Monster, psychic powers that, conveniently stop working when a skeptic is watching. The effect is always weak, always hard to pin down, and it never, ever gets clear. All right, sign number 4 is a huge one. The only evidence is anecdotal. Anecdotes are just personal stories. You know, my cousin's friend tried this magic potion and it worked. Stories can be super powerful and emotional, but from a scientific point of view, they prove absolutely nothing. And this slide just lays out the difference perfectly. Real science uses things like randomized, double-blind tests to get rid of any bias. Bogus science, it leans on personal testimonials and "it worked for me" stories. You have to remember this key rule. The plural of anecdote is not data. For our final set of signs, let's look at the story the discoverer tells about themselves and their work. Because sometimes the narrative they spin is just as important as the claim itself. So the 5th sign is what's called an appeal to ancient wisdom. The argument is basically, hey, people have believed this for centuries, so it must be true. But come on, for centuries people also thought bloodletting was a great medical idea. How old a belief is has absolutely zero to do with whether it's scientifically true. And here's warning sign number 6. The discoverer has worked completely alone. We all love that Hollywood myth of the lone genius having a eureka moment, but the reality of modern science, it's all about collaboration. Big breakthroughs happen when teams build on each other's work. Working in a vacuum is usually a sign you're cut off from the scientific conversation, not that you're ahead of it. And finally, number 7. This might be the biggest red flag of all. To explain what they saw, the discoverer says we have to throw out the known laws of nature and create new ones. Look, if your claim violates a fundamental law of physics, like the conservation of energy, the amount of proof you need is astronomical. it is so much more likely that your observation was flawed than that our entire understanding of the universe is wrong.
Okay, we've covered a ton of ground here, so let's wrap this all up and put these 7 signs together into a handy toolkit that you can actually use.
So let's run through the toolkit one last time. Be skeptical if a claim is pitched straight to the media, or if it comes with a conspiracy theory about suppression. Question any evidence that's barely detectable or is just based on stories. Be wary of appeals to ancient wisdom, the lone genius myth, and especially any claim that says we need to rewrite the laws of nature. And here's why this all matters so much. As Dr. Park himself says, being able to spot this stuff isn't just a fun academic exercise. It's a critical skill that every single one of us needs to get through the modern world. So, I'll leave you with a challenge. The next time you're scrolling and you see some headline about an incredible new discovery, just pause. Run it through this checklist. How many red flags pop up? You might be really surprised at what you find.